My stepson joked, "You're just mom's regret in a shirt." So I took off the shirt, packed everything under my name, and never looked back. His joke was the last one. "You're just mom's regret in a shirt." Jason didn't laugh when he said it. He didn't grin or glance toward Sarah, waiting for her to play referee. He just looked at me. Dead in the face, spoon hovering midair, mouth set like stone, and delivered it plain. Like weather, like fact, like something he'd rehearsed and decided would be better said than swallowed. Sarah didn't flinch. She blinked once, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, and took another sip of wine. Her silence wasn't surprise. It was complicity. She heard him, sure, but she wasn't going to do anything about it. I was still chewing. A bite of pork chop, seasoned and dry. I remember how the taste soured immediately. I set my fork down on the plate and felt the room freeze around me. Not in drama, not in suspense, just stillness, like the final tick before the timer runs out. Jason looked back to his plate. That was it. No apology. No, just kidding. Just a 17-year-old boy telling me what he thought of me over dinner I had paid for, cooked and served. In a house I helped pay off. At a table I assembled myself when it came in 3 broken boxes and missing the hardware. So I stood up. I didn't say a word. I peeled off the shirt. Pale blue, short sleeves, 2 buttons near the collarbone gone loose from years of wear. I folded it slowly, neatly, every movement deliberate. Sarah still didn't speak. Jason smirked at his plate, like he'd finally won a game I hadn't known we were playing. I folded that shirt and walked to the front door. Slipped it into a canvas grocery bag with a few other things I'd bought for this house. A new phone charger, my electric razor, the pair of pliers Jason used last week and left rusted outside. I picked up my boots, my keys. I left my phone on the kitchen counter. Then I walked out. No goodbye, no slammed door, just me, shirtless, bag in hand, stepping into November wind with nothing in my chest but a quiet, cold certainty. I was done. I didn't look back. I moved into a one-room loft above a vape shop in Garden City. The kind of place you rent when you don't want to explain anything. Brick walls, unsealed windows, a heater that coughed all night like it had asthma. There was a cot, a folding chair, and a box of tools I'd packed years ago with the dream that one day I'd pass them to Jason. Not anymore. My name is Thomas. I'm 46 years old. For 5 years I lived with Sarah and her son, Jason, in a modest house just outside Boise. I met them in a parking lot outside a charity car rally. Sarah had a flat tire and a cracked phone screen. Jason, 13 at the time, was pacing, arms crossed, muttering into a dying battery. I helped. I didn't think twice. Funny how quickly help turns into obligation. I didn't try to be Jason's dad. Never insisted on the title. Just showed up. Picked him up from baseball. Covered his lunch account when his father forgot. I bought the winter coat when his dad didn't respond for 3 weeks. Paid for the dental work. Covered the therapy Sarah said he needed after a bad breakup. Then covered the part she never noticed, the part where Jason never said thank you. Not once. He used to call me Thomas. Always in that hard, formal way that felt like a slap dressed in politeness. Thomas, can I borrow the car? Thomas, we're out of oat milk. Thomas, did you move my charger? Never dad. Never even stepdad. Just Thomas, the man-shaped wallet who fixed the plumbing and kept the garage organized. But I kept showing up. Because presence meant something to me. I told myself it would pay off one day. That he'd get older, grow into understanding. That one day, he'd realize what I'd done for him. What I'd carried without complaint. But that line, Mom's regret in a shirt, that was the line that told me everything I needed to know. The first night alone, I didn't sleep. I sat in that folding chair with a cup of instant coffee cooling beside me. The window buzzed with cheap insulation. Outside, headlights passed like ghosts over the cracked pavement. The strip mall stayed lit all night. A liquor store, a vape shop, a shuttered massage parlor with fading red letters that promised relaxation. I stared at my box of tools. They sat by the door, lid half cracked, a socket wrench peeking out like it was waiting to be remembered. That box had lived in Sarah's garage for 5 years. It had fixed leaky sinks, busted drawer slides, Jason's bike chain the night before his 7th grade ride-a-thon. I thought I'd pass it to him someday. A quiet inheritance. But not anymore. Now it sat beside my feet like a dog no one wanted. My phone didn't ring. Sarah didn't call. Jason sure as hell didn't. And I sat there, shirtless under a wool blanket, letting the silence settle around me. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was just hollow. The next morning, I got up and poured another cup of coffee. Same cup. Same freeze-dried crystals. I opened my laptop and started canceling things. First, the gas card. I'd issued it to Jason when he got his license. So you never have to worry about getting stuck, I told him. He'd used it last week to fill up and buy himself snacks at the pump. Gone. Next, the insurance policy. I switched it back to my name only. Jason was listed as a dependent for 3 years. When I asked Sarah if his dad would ever contribute, she shrugged and said, "Don't hold your breath." Then the credit card. The one he used to accidentally buy new headphones. $65. Overnight shipping, billed to my account. Closed. By noon, I got a fraud alert. He tried to use the card again. Declined. By afternoon, I got an email from his school. Robotics program fee unpaid. The recurring payment I had set up was declined. Sarah must not have noticed. Or maybe she assumed I'd keep paying, even after I walked. I hovered over the email. Then I clicked delete. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it because something inside me finally aligned. For years, I told myself presence mattered more than words. That being there, quietly, reliably, was the foundation of fatherhood. That one day, maybe that quiet work would be seen. Acknowledged. But I'd been wrong. Presence, unacknowledged, just becomes silence. Support, unappreciated, becomes servitude. I wasn't part of Jason's family. I was an accessory, a background figure. And that night at the dinner table, he told me what they both believed, deep down, that I was replaceable, that I didn't matter, that I was, at best, her mistake dressed neatly for dinner. So I left, and I took the one thing I had left to give, absence. The absence of my money, my labor, my listening, my peace. And for the first time in 5 years, I felt something strange blooming in my chest. Not grief, not even rage. Just clarity. 2 days after I left, Sarah called. I watched the screen light up with her name, once warm, now clinical, and let it ring until the room fell quiet again. Then came the text. "You're really leaving over one dumb joke?" I stared at the message. 14 words that told me everything. To her, it was a joke, a misfire, a teenager being a teenager. But I knew better. That line Jason threw at me wasn't a joke. It was a verdict, a distillation of 5 years of passive contempt. I wasn't a father to him. I wasn't a partner to Sarah. I was an accessory, a means to an end. And now I was gone. So I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my banking app and canceled the monthly transfer to Sarah's account. The one I'd been using to quietly cover half the utilities. Water, electricity, internet. The invisible work of a man trying to hold together a family that never truly saw him. 7 days later, their power went out. I didn't hear it from her. I heard it from the auto-reply when she tried to call again, once, then twice. Then the angry text, "Real mature. Be a grown man." I read it, closed the thread. Because here's what grown men know. Sometimes silence is the loudest thing you can offer. A week passed. I kept working. Came home to my tiny loft. Slept on the cot. Coffee in the morning. Radio in the background. Slow evenings where I repaired what I could of my own mind. I didn't rush to explain myself. I didn't crave the apology. I just let the absence speak for itself. But absence has gravity. Pulls things out of hiding. 2 weeks after I walked out, I came by to grab the last of my things. My old drill, the circular saw, a pair of boots I'd left in the garage. Sarah was at work. Jason answered the door with earbuds in and that same practiced disdain on his face. He looked me up and down like I was someone who'd wandered in from the wrong movie. "Well, look who's back," he said, pulling out one bud. Mom's ex with a savior complex. I didn't flinch, didn't speak. I walked past him, into the garage, opened the cabinet and pulled my things out, methodical, focused. He stood behind me like a shadow, arms crossed, waiting for a reaction. Thought you moved out, he said. Guess the martyr act didn't pan out. I zipped the bag, slung it over my shoulder, and then he said it. You were just a mistake to erase. I stopped, not for drama, not for effect, just for truth. I turned to face him. His face was hard, rehearsed until I spoke. No, Jason, I wasn't a mistake. I was an opportunity, and you burned it. His eyes flicked. No smirk, no reply, just the slow, dawning realization that for the first time in 5 years, I wasn't playing. I walked out with the bag on my back. That was the last time I saw him with empty hands. Sarah didn't get it right away. Another week passed in silence. Then another text. You're seriously doing this? He's just a kid. I replied. 8 words. He's nearly grown. Let him pay the price. No more, no less. No response. Then, days later, a new one. He can't afford the senior trip. It means a lot. I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Then I typed, ask his father. Sent it. Closed the thread. Deleted the contact. They had made their decision. In word, in silence, in how they treated my presence like wallpaper, necessary but never noticed. Now they would live with the weight of what they thought was lightness. Jason's headphones stopped working, no replacements. Sarah's gas tank dipped lower, no card. The thermostat blinked, delinquent again. I imagined them at the kitchen table, candle lit, blaming the electric company. Never the man who used to quietly keep it all from happening. Because that's what I was. Not a father, not a husband, just a man-shaped buffer between them and consequence. Until I wasn't. 3 weeks after I left, I spotted Jason at the grocery store. He didn't see me at first. He was bagging groceries, paper hat, red vest, dull-eyed. Not the elite college-bound teen he'd projected online. Just another kid with bills, minimum wage, and no backup. When he turned and saw me, his posture shifted. Not into anger, not pride, just stillness. He walked over slowly. No earbuds, no swagger. Doing it myself now, he said. I nodded. I get it, he added. I nodded again. He didn't ask for anything. Didn't make excuses. Just walked back to the register. And for the first time, I believed him. Not because he said he understood, but because he didn't ask me to make it easier. That's how you know someone's learning. A few weeks later, a letter arrived at my P.O. box. No return address. Handwritten. I recognized the mess of the pen strokes immediately. Jason. The letter was short, sloppy, but honest. You were the one I pushed away because I thought you'd always stay. I'm sorry. No promises. No requests. Just that. I read it 3 times. Then I tucked it into the drawer where I keep my passport, old photos, and a few things I couldn't throw out. Because that letter was important. Late, but real. A month after I left, Sarah texted again. You're really going to keep punishing him? He's just a kid. I stared at the message, sitting in the cracked plastic chair by my window, the late morning sun slanting through the dusty blinds. Below, a teenager was learning to drive in a parking lot full of oil stains and broken glass. Her father barked instructions from the sidewalk. She nodded, hands 10 and 2, eyes fixed forward. And I thought, that's what being a parent is supposed to look like. Not this. I tapped my reply slowly, letting each word weigh what it needed to. He's almost grown. And if at 18 he thinks degrading people is normal, let him learn what that costs. I hit send. Didn't wait for a reply, because there's a point where explanations become masks. And I was done dressing up the truth. More time passed. I kept working. Got leaner. Harder. Something about solitude strips away the softness people take for granted. The need to be liked. The tolerance for half-truths. I woke up earlier. Went to bed sober. Walked longer. Said less. One afternoon, while patching a tire for a neighbor's kid in the lot downstairs, I saw an email come through. Subject: Senior Trip Deadline. Message: Hello? We're reaching out because Jason's remaining balance for the senior trip has not been paid. Please contact the school office immediately. I stared at it, closed it. No guilt, because for 5 years I had paid ahead, kept the lights on, filled the gap. I had bought their way out of every crisis before it hit. I had said yes until the word became meaningless. Now I said nothing. A few days later, another message from Sarah. This one wasn't cold. It was something else. We're really struggling. I didn't realize how much you handled. The bills, the car, everything. I didn't know. I read it in the same way I'd once read birthday cards from Jason. Flat, processed, no longer binding. I didn't reply, not out of cruelty, but because I no longer had anything left to explain. Letting someone walk all over you isn't noble. It's just another way to disappear. And I wasn't disappearing anymore. It was early spring when Sarah showed up at my door. I hadn't seen her in person since the night I walked out. She looked tired. Not aged. Just softened in the places that had once been firm. She wore the same coat I'd bought her 2 winters ago. The one she swore she didn't need, then wore every day once the snow came. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. She didn't ask to be let in either. We stood there in silence for a moment before she finally spoke. Jason's working nights. He's missed some classes. He won't talk to me about it. I nodded. She waited. When I didn't respond, she added, He misses you. I didn't move. Then, quietly, So do I. I looked past her to the parking lot. Same cracked pavement. Same row of flickering streetlights. Nothing changed. Not out there. Not in me. You didn't stop him, I said. You didn't say a word that night. Not one. Her voice broke. I didn't think it would matter that much. There it was. The sentence that untied everything. That's the problem, Sarah. It didn't matter to you, but it mattered to me. She looked down, said nothing. After she left, I sat in the same folding chair, the same cold coffee by my side. And for the first time, I realized I didn't miss her. Not really. What I missed was the idea of her. The possibility that this family I tried to build could be something solid. But possibility isn't loyalty. And Sarah's loyalty had always been with keeping the peace. Even if that meant burying me under it. A week later, another letter came. Jason again. This one longer. Neater. Like he had tried. I get it now. Why you left. I thought you'd always be there no matter how I treated you. I was wrong. I see it now. I see all of it. He didn't beg. Didn't ask for help. Just wrote. You did more for me than anyone ever has. You were the one who stayed. And I acted like you were a ghost. I'm sorry. I sat with the letter in my lap for a long time. I didn't cry, but something in my chest softened. Not toward him. Toward myself. I'd waited 5 years for that kind of honesty. I just hadn't expected it to come after I stopped asking for it. That spring, I drove out to the edge of town. To the lake where we once tried to camp for Jason's 14th birthday. It had rained the entire weekend. The tent collapsed. Jason complained the whole time, said the food sucked, said I was trying too hard. Back then, I thought the failure was mine. That I hadn't done it right. That if I'd brought better snacks, or remembered to download a movie for him to watch when it rained, he might have smiled. But standing there now, watching the water push softly against the shore, I understood something else. It was never about the snacks. It was about being seen. And I never was. That spring, I found peace in the smallest of things. The sound of boots on cracked gravel as I walked to the bus stop. The clink of my coffee mug against the chipped windowsill each morning. The silence that followed. Not empty, but full of things that didn't need to be said anymore. I'd spent years trying to be seen. Years trying to earn a place in a house built on conditions no one was willing to say out loud. Sarah needed support but not partnership. Jason wanted resources, not a father. And when I gave both without question, they mistook it for something bottomless. But now the giving had stopped. And the silence I left behind had started to teach them things I never could. Jason didn't write again. He didn't need to. His last letter sat folded beside my tax returns and old photographs. It had weight to it. Not enough to undo everything, but enough to prove he'd stepped out of the house of mirrors Sarah raised him in. Just long enough to see his own reflection and flinch. I never replied. Didn't see the point. Some letters aren't invitations. They're confessions. And confessions don't always earn answers. One afternoon, I saw him again. This time not at the grocery store, but downtown. He was sweeping the sidewalk in front of a restaurant. Apron tied around his waist. Shirt stained at the shoulders. His head was down. Focused. He looked up. Caught me watching. And he didn't smile. He didn't wave. He just nodded once. Firm. Like a man should. And went back to work. I turned and walked on. That was the closest thing to peace I'd ever gotten from him. And it was enough. Sarah never reached out again. Not really. She texted once, months later. A photo of our old dog, sleeping on the porch. No words, just the image. I stared at it for a few seconds, then deleted it. Because nostalgia is a drug. And I was clean now. There were moments, quiet ones, where I'd wonder if she ever understood what she let happen. If she ever sat alone in that house and replayed the night I left, wondering how many silences she let grow into walls. But that wondering never lasted long, because the answer didn't matter. If she didn't know then, it was already too late. I bought a porch chair. Not much of a milestone, but it meant something. Steel frame, cushioned. Nothing fancy but solid. I'd sit there in the evenings, warm coffee in one hand, the buzz of traffic far enough away not to interrupt the quiet. I didn't watch the clock anymore. Time passed like water down a stream. Steady, indifferent. I'd built nothing big. No legacy. No names passed down. But I had something better. Stillness. Stillness unthreatened by expectation. By need. By the gnawing ache of being invisible inside your own life. One night, a woman I'd met through work joined me on the porch. We shared a quiet dinner takeout. I didn't cook anymore unless I felt like it. She didn't ask about Sarah. I didn't volunteer it. We talked about dumb things. Books, tires, the right way to patch drywall. When she left, she said, "You're easy to sit with." I said nothing, but I felt it. Something slow and small shifting inside my chest. Not hope, not yet, but maybe something like breath. That summer, I got a letter from the school district. A thank you notice for years of donations. Must have been automatic. I hadn't given a cent since I left. I put it through the shredder. Then I made coffee. Then I sat on my porch, facing the street, and listened to the hum of evening traffic. The sun slipped behind the rooftops. The sky turned the color of cold ash. And I sat there, alive in my own stillness, knowing no one was going to text, call, or demand anything from me. I wasn't Dad. I wasn't Thomas the provider. I was just me. And for the first time, that was enough. Jason would go on. He'd learn the hard way most boys do. He'd taste his own limits. Watch checks bounce. Feel the loneliness that comes when the scaffolding disappears and you realize how little you understand about standing on your own. Maybe he'd rise. Maybe he'd stumble. That wasn't mine to worry about anymore, because I had already given him my best years. Quietly, consistently, without asking for applause. And when the time came, he spit it back like something rotten. He said I was just Mom's regret in a shirt. And maybe I was. But I was also the man who paid for every light switch that flipped on in that house. Every tire that didn't blow. Every coat that kept him dry. Every dentist appointment. Every morning he rode to school with gas in the tank because I couldn't bear to see him miss out. Regret? No. What I regret is letting it go on for so long. One evening, a teenager from the building next door asked me for help fixing his bike. I said yes. He watched my hands carefully, asked questions, thanked me twice. When we were done, he offered me a soda from his fridge. Warm, cheap, but he meant it. I sat with him on the curb for a few minutes, passing the bottle back and forth. He told me about a girl he liked. I listened. Then I stood up, patted his shoulder and said, "You're gonna be fine." He nodded. Not like he believed it, but like he needed to hear it from someone who wasn't lying. That moment, that simple, stupid moment, meant more than 5 years in that house ever did. That was my ending. No redemption arc. No family reunion. No reinvitation to the table I once set every night with care. Just the quiet dignity of walking away and letting the silence do what my voice never could. I was no longer mom's regret in a shirt. I was a man who chose himself, and never regretted it, because sometimes the only way to prove your worth is to leave behind the silence that reveals it. Would you have stayed? Would you have endured it longer? Or would you have walked out too, the moment the person you fed and raised looked at you like you were disposable? Tell me, was I wrong? Or was I finally, just finally, right?